All right, so quick notes for 1.2 inductive reasoning, the second topic in our very first unit in geometry class. So we're focused here on the quick notes and specifically inductive reasoning. So let's go ahead and get a definition for that. And a little bit more background information. So inductive reasoning is about noticing patterns in data and making a conjecture based on the evidence. So noticing patterns in data and making a conjecture. That's a big word. Conjecture based on the evidence. So when we're talking about this phrasing conjecture, what I would like to do is go back to a previous problem, looking specifically at 3A, our main man Jim and his issues, I suppose, with his lactose problems or potential problems with dairy. So if I'm looking at 3A, the question says for 3A on the front side of this piece of paper, what logical conclusion can you make given the evidence? So this concept of a logical conclusion, that right there, that phrasing kind of lends itself to being a conjecture. So in order to have ourselves a conclusion, kind of come to the very end of this situation based off the evidence, that logical conclusion is a phrasing that we would see that would kind of be a way to highlight having a conjecture. So we're talking conjectures. We said that this is really just a way to come to a conclusion or a generalization. So when we see this phrasing conjecture, we're thinking conclusion or a generalization. All right, so also want to say a conjecture is based off limited evidence and thus not guaranteed to be true. A conjecture is based off limited evidence and thus not guaranteed to be true. So again, we see that phrase conjecture. So we said that we can certainly notice a pattern. We can certainly see a couple things leading us to a spot where we're at a point and we're starting to feel confident about that situation. But it might not necessarily be the finalized case. This comes up for us as a good example to kind of take a look at. Again, that same situation, 3, where we're talking about Jim. He drank milkshake at a restaurant and got sick. Tuesday, he wasn't feeling well after eating cheese. Yesterday, Jim attended an ice cream social and complained of stomach pain. So for 3B, the question came up, and kind of was a multiple choice situation, which additional piece of information would make you rethink your conclusion? So if that situation comes up where we have to rethink our conclusion, maybe there's something that we see or takes place later on that kind of sort of disproves that conjecture that we previously had. It is possible. So is it going to always happen? Well, depends on the situation. When we disprove a conjecture, what we come up with is a counterexample. Go ahead and try that again. So my hope is that you're jotting these thoughts down for yourself. So this phrasing of a counterexample, probably have heard this phrase before, but again, we have ourselves this decent pattern where we get 3 days in a row of Jim having these issues. And then all of a sudden, in 3 weeks, we're having breakfast with Jim. We see him eat a buttery pastry, and he feels fine. So maybe it was just this particular set of 3 days where he had a stomach bug going on, and he wasn't feeling good regardless of the scenario. But there's definitely ways to prove conjectures wrong, and we would do that with the counterexample.